And this week, with yet another Republican presidential primary debate in the books, the Republican National Committee already has its sights set on the next debate stage. The RNC announcing the fourth debate will be held in Tuscaloosa, Alabama on December 6th. But Republican frontrunner Donald Trump will continue to be a no-show as he openly schemes and declares his intent to weaponize the Justice Department against his political enemies.
They've done indictments in order to win an election. They call it weaponization. And the people aren't going to stand for it. But yeah, they have done something that allows the next party. I mean, if I happen to be president and I see somebody who's doing well and beating me very badly, I say, go down and indict them. Mostly that would be, they would be out of business. They'd be out. They'd be out of the election.
Joining me now, Alencia Johnson, political strategist and senior advisor for Biden for President 2020, also the founder and chief impact officer of 1063 West Broad, and Rick Wilson, on your screen, co-founder of the Lincoln Project, Republican media strategist, and the author of Running Against the Devil, a plot to save America from Trump and Democrats from themselves. Good morning to my Saturday morning Power political panel. Rick, I'd like to start with you. We've now had 3 of these so-called debates, and I put that in quotes because it's just a lot of mudslinging. None of them featuring the front runner, Donald Trump. We know he's not going to attend the 4th debate and will probably hold another rally as counter-programming. So, Rick, at this stage, what's the point of these debates other than getting more reasons not to like Vivek Ramaswamy?
Look, I mean, well, Vivek already sort of spiked the hate meter in America all the way up for being a guy with zero redeeming personal qualities. But I will say this, Katie, this is it's a kabuki dance. It's symbolic only. All of these people on the stage are hoping that Donald Trump chokes on a Big Mac or gets hit by a meteor or eaten by a shark. There is no hope. There is no path for any of them. They're spritzing back and forth inside this band of, at the very peak, maybe 15, 13%. In every single possible mathematical calculus right now, once you get past the first 3 states, Donald Trump is going to roll up places where he's right now ahead by 40, 50, even 60 points on Super Tuesday. By the time you get to March 12th and Florida, where Ron DeSantis is currently in a very, very distant second place, Donald Trump will have won at that point California and Texas, and then he will win Florida, and that is the ball game. It's over. This is all symbolic. It's all sort of the horse race industrial complex trying to make something out of this that just doesn't exist. These are people who have no real guts, courage, or motivation to actually go out and critique Donald Trump. I mean, Chris Christie's the exception, but he is at currently about 1%.
I'm envisioning, Rick, a Big Mac wielding shark riding a meteor based upon what you just told me. Alencia, Axios is reporting that after the success on abortion rights this week, Democrats now say, of course, there's added urgency for efforts to get abortion rights initiatives on 2024 ballots in our battleground states. Is abortion still going to be the winning issue going into 2024?
Listen, I'm going to say absolutely yes. And look, I spent 6 years working at Planned Parenthood's national office before Roe was overturned. And it is something that we knew would galvanize voters, especially as threats continued. And when Roe was overturned, I mean, there was poll after poll in midterms that said it wasn't a deciding issue. It was the economy. Newsflash, abortion is an economic issue for people, particularly women and young people. And so the reality is, after our gains on this past Tuesday in 2023, and after the gains that we've seen where abortion was taken directly to the voters, even in deeply red states, and it has won, abortion is the absolute issue for Democrats to run on so that voters have something to vote for, as well as the issue to contrast against Republicans, because as we saw here in Virginia, where I'm at, Glenn Youngkin tried to position himself as a moderate and kept talking about a 15-week ban. And the reality is, majority of Americans don't even want a 15-week ban, which it is going to be an issue for the Republican Party. We saw some of that play out at the debate this week as well. And so the Democrats are going to be very smart to continue to run on the issue as candidates, but also ballot initiatives.
You know, Rick, going into this panel with you, I played that portion of the interview that Donald Trump had with Univision this past week. Trump obviously saying the quiet part out loud, admitting again in an interview he'd have no problem using the federal government, weaponizing it to go after his political opponents and enemies. Now, that's not at all shocking or necessarily new for Trump to declare. Why are there not more alarm bells going off, Rick? I know there are some of you that are always ringing these alarm bells, but I mean, are we just so numb to it? Are we just normalizing that type of conduct or that type of behavior?
I'll tell you, Katie, as someone who, after the January 6th hearings, released a bunch of documents, discovered that the White House had gone to Bill Barr and asked him to investigate me and my colleagues, I get that sense of the danger. The personal nature of it escapes many Americans, but this is a guy, remember, just as the Republicans told you for 50 years they were going to repeal Roe versus Wade, Donald Trump is now telling you he is going to use the power of government to punish his political enemies. He's going to use the power of the state. My old libertarian friends should be paying attention to the power of the state to achieve his personal political vengeance on people who he believes have wronged him. This is not America, to quote David Bowie. This is something much darker and much different and much more dangerous, and we've got to pay attention to it. We've got to listen to it. And the problem we're having right now as a country, I think there are way too many people who still think, oh, well, Trump can't win. Trump will be in jail. Trump will die. None of those things can you count on to protect you, because the guy has the luck of the devil. And if he's back, he's going to cause enormous damage in this country to individuals, to groups, to political opponents at every level and every scale. And the people around him this time will not be restrained by any grown-ups or adults or establishment Washington Times. It's going to all be the crazies. They're going to go absolutely wild with this guy, and he's going to let them do it.
Alencia, take a listen to Hillary Clinton this week saying this about Donald Trump.
Trump is telling us what he intends to do.
We need to listen to
Take him at his word. The man means to throw people in jail who disagree with him, shut down legitimate press outlets, do what he can to literally undermine the rule of law and our country's values.
I mean, I know, mind blown that we could put Rick Wilson and Hillary Clinton together to say the same damn thing, but they are. I mean, Alencia, these are hallmarks of a dictatorship. And yet, again, there's this normalization of statements like those made by Donald Trump and behavior like Donald Trump. What needs to be done to emphasize how abjectly horrific things would be with a second Trump presidency?
I mean, I'm going to be very honest, Katie. It is very disheartening to see that voters are actually okay with that. Like, Donald Trump still has a significant base of people to who, let's be very honest, we know that none of them are actually really benefiting from Donald Trump's policies, but he has this cult-like following that regardless of the things that he has done, regardless of Hillary Clinton, once again, being right that he's going to do what he says he's going to do. Although we spend a lot of time focusing on her emails, this man literally upended our entire democracy. There is a cult following of him because he's able to get away with some of this because of the way that he talks, right? He sounds like a quote-unquote fighter for the little guy when the reality is he's conning America to protect himself. So we've got to do a lot of work. I mean, those of us who care about democracy, really educating people on the existential crisis that it is, that's Donald Trump. At the same time, voters are saying they want something to vote for and not just against, which I don't understand what is so hard to grapple about and what another Donald Trump presidency would look like. But we've got to do a better job of really educating people on what this existential crisis will look like. And that's exactly what it is. And I'm really scared about the dark days that we are not only already in America, but barreling towards if he is reelected again. And we know that, unfortunately, you know, with these third-party candidates trying to get in, that is closer to reality, sadly.